Borg McEnroe, Cowboys Steelers, Ali Frazier, of course, Lakers Celtics, Dodgers Yankees. Now we've got the iconic coach and the legendary program against the speed, the talent, the dynamic playmaking ability, and the sheer swagger at Clemson. All right, Alabama Clemson treated us last year to a great game and has the makings of a remarkable rematch. We break down the battle for college football's crown next. All right, it's Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. That means you should be watching us on College Football Coast to Coast. This is your appointment viewing for the week. If you're a college football junkie, because we bring it each and every week, this is week number 6. And we thank you for joining us. And, of course, if you're not able to catch us live, you can catch us on a YouTube at Mark Rogers TV, where we have each show posted right there. We join you live again on YouTube and also on Facebook Live. We got quite the show in store for you tonight as we prep the national championship game and talk nothing but Alabama and Clemson for the next 45 or 50 minutes with some of the top contributors across the nation, with Ben George from Tide 102.9. We've got ESPN's Peter Burns from the SEC Network, and also Ryan Cantor, who writes for SB Nation's platform for Clemson Athletics, shaking the Southland. Remind you to join me on Mark Rogers TV on YouTube, where we crank out college football content. We just completed a remarkable run through the bowl season with pre- and post-game analysis, instant analysis as the seconds were ticking off the clock of many of these postseason games, and, of course, predictions and contributions from all sorts of people that write for college football. We also want to let you know that we've also launched 3 other YouTube channels. So it's Mark Rogers TV ACC for you Atlantic Coast Conference fans that want to brag up this season's 8-3 bowl finish with, of course, a possible national championship as well. Mark Rogers TV Pac-12 and also Mark Rogers TV SEC. And I believe for the first time in quite some time, we're going to have quite a debate on our hands over the next several months in debating the best conference in college football. For much of the season, it appeared to be the Big Ten. The SEC, of course, with the tremendous recruiting classes and talent moving on to the NFL, is always in the discussion. But I think for the first time in a long time, and maybe ever, we have to take the ACC seriously, considering what it accomplished during this postseason run of going 8-3. And, of course, we just don't take the records on the surface, but we delve into the performance and the play and what the performance meant. And for the ACC, it was mighty impressive. And one of those big showings for the conference was Clemson against Ohio State, of course. And none of us, and if you think you did envision this, I just can't believe you. 31-0 over Ohio State, and not much of an effort for the Buckeyes offense. But many of us saw this coming in regards to the warning signs throughout the season for this Ohio State offense. The Buckeyes, we knew, had a young group of players surrounding J.T. Barrett at quarterback coming into the season. We knew that this was going to be an outstanding and dynamic team from a talent perspective, but in running an offense and getting an offensive line unit to play together and getting the cohesion between the quarterback and the wide receivers, it takes more than talent. It takes a lot of coaching, takes a lot of work, and it takes chemistry built over time. And they had a very young team. It still is a remarkable stat to me to believe that this team is the youngest playing FBS football. So they did make the Final Four, and yes, it ended brutally, but consider that it's the youngest team in college football. And so most of these guys are coming back. And we did, again, see the warning signs after the big statement that this team made at Oklahoma in scoring 45 points against Oklahoma. Then we saw the warning signs against Penn State in losing a late lead 21-7 and blowing that game and not being able to mount a last-minute drive because just the offensive line just could not stop the Penn State pass rush. We saw it against even the likes of a Northwestern team that finished 6-6, and certainly against Michigan in particular. against Michigan State, a team that went 3-9 that took the Buckeyes to the wire in a 1-point loss. Ohio State was teetering on the brink most of the season and carried by its defense. And then it all came crashing down against Clemson, a very talented and poised and experienced team. So in looking at this Ohio State offense, a number of things come to mind in the aftermath of this shellacking against Clemson. First of all, we know that it hasn't happened to an Urban Meyer team ever, not being able to score 1 point. So you could blame it on the field goal kicker, Tyler Durbin. It certainly didn't help things when he failed to convert 2 field goals in the first quarter. One would have put Ohio State out in front 3-0. One would have gotten them close at 10-6. So it kind of, you would think, demoralized the defense, continuing to stop Clemson's offense and really making some plays on that side of the ball that the offense could generate nothing. And when the field goal kicker trots out there twice and misses, and you're giving up those points, that is not good. This is the first shutout for Ohio State football since going back to 1993. That's a long, long time. And ironically, it was in a championship type situation that season when the Buckeyes were undefeated with 1 tie and taking on their arch rival, the Michigan Wolverines, and losing. And they might have marched on to a national championship, but got whitewashed, as John Cooper often did, against Michigan, losing 28-0. Another thing here, left guard Michael Jordan had to leave the game, a true freshman who's had his issues this season, but definitely developed and matured throughout the campaign. He was playing his best football. He had to leave the second drive of the game, and his replacement was lost and beaten badly most of this game. I'm rarely the type that picks on play calling. So I know a lot of fans out there, a lot of you guys like to pick on play calling and think that you are master play callers. I don't necessarily typically go after the play calling, but I did notice a few things during this Ohio State effort. Curtis Samuel, of course, was pinned by Clemson. Dabo Swinney named him by name as the guy that we need to stop. And it was apparent that Clemson knew where he was on the field at all times. We see it during bowl season, during postseason play, that teams that even have anemic offenses, that are very limited offensively, have 4 and 5 weeks to prepare. We saw the likes of Wake Forest and Boston College come out with new plays, new sets, new wrinkles in the offense, alignments that and plays that the opposing defensive coordinator had never seen, did not exist on tape because they had 4 or 5 weeks to add to the offensive concepts. Ohio State didn't seem to have done that and seemed to rely on the same plays that were the staple of the 2016 season. So for Curtis Samuel, that was the jet sweep. That was the lateral pass out in the flat, in which Clemson proved time after time after time that it had the speed and the playmakers to get to the outside to bottle him up with 3 or 4 tacklers. The thing that Ohio State failed to do in this game was give the ball to Mike Weber. Okay, the first 2 times he touched it, he did fumble. But before that ever came to fruition, Mike Weber was not given the football, and Ohio State was down 10-0, then 17-0. He had 1 carry for 5 yards. And the first 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 times Mike Weber touched the ball, once he finally got his hands on it, in addition to the 2 fumbles, 1 lost and 1 recovered by Ohio State, is that Mike Weber gashed the defense. J.T. Barrett, when he ran straight forward between the tackles, gashed the defense. Not huge plays, not 25 and 30-yard plays, but 8 and 10-yard runs by Mike Weber. But the game was pretty much out of hand at that point by the time they got around to their 1,000-yard running back carrying the football. The other thing curious to me in this game was the 1 pass play downfield went to Benjamin Victor, a guy that we've heard about in recruiting sorts. You will know the name Benjamin Victor. He's a big signee out of Florida for this Ohio State football team. So the freshman got on the field and caught a slant pass for 15 or 18 yards. Very impressive. Beat his man off the ball. And Ohio State's got a play downfield for maybe the first time the entire game. And then Victor's escorted to the sideline and not seen from for, I don't know, 3 or 4 more series. And then the next time we saw him, the game was out of hand. And he again beat his defender off the ball, off the line, and drew a pass interference call. We could have seen that earlier in the game, possibly, if Ohio State had any chance of winning. So before we get to our first guess, of course, the Buckeyes are shaking things up, and it's reminiscent of the last time they played Clemson in a postseason game 3 years ago. The defensive backfield in particular was shredded by Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins, and Urban Meyer immediately made changes. Chris Ash was brought in to fix the secondary, and we've seen a tremendous top 5 Ohio State defense ever since. Now it's the offense. Kevin Wilson most likely added as offensive coordinator. Of course, most recently the Indiana head coach, and he's done a tremendous job, not necessarily in molding young men off the field. Those were some issues that led to his ouster at Indiana, but as offensive coordinator at Indiana. We know that Tim Beck is on his way to Texas, and most Buckeye fans not sorry to see him go, so he will reunite with Tom Herman there. And Ryan Day, the new quarterbacks coach, he has 15 years of NFL experience with a number of teams, most recently San Francisco and Philadelphia, and he led to an offensive uprising, his tutelage of quarterbacks at both BC and Temple. So is the Ohio State loss embarrassing? Yes. Is it tragic? No. This team will continue to recruit. Urban Meyer will be even more determined. And if anything, he has what he usually likes to have, and that's a motivational tool to head to 2017. All right, let's talk Clemson and Alabama. They're the two teams still playing football, and for all of college football's glory coming up this Monday night. I believe we've got Ben George from Tide 102.9 on the line. Ben, how are you tonight?
Good, Mark. Sorry about your New Year's Eve. Didn't go quite as planned for you. We both talked about that Urban Meyer, Nick Saban matchup in the championship game. Just didn't work out.
It seems to be a good one on paper when thinking about history and tradition, but not so much in 2016. So it's probably better for all of college football to see Deshaun Watson part 2 against Alabama. So speaking of which, we've got this situation with Lane Kiffin moving on. He, of course, has been the offensive coordinator now for, 3 seasons under 3 different quarterbacks, and done an effective job, although there have been issues with he and the head coach on the sideline. But I don't think anyone would discount what he's brought to this offense in regards to his ingenuity. Now it gets passed on to Steve Sarkisian. So do you have any concerns about what could be lost in the transition?
I don't think so. I think, Sark's been around the program now for a little bit, been in meetings, gotten familiar with this offense. And to be honest, Mark, it can't be a whole lot worse than it was offensively against Washington. And really, you go back to the Florida game, wasn't a whole lot better. Sure, they put up 50 points in that game, but look at the offensive numbers and the output wasn't really there. So, I don't know what the complete explanation for Saturday's performance was on the offensive side of the football. Maybe it was just being conservative, knowing your defense doesn't want to give up any or won't give up many points, and you don't want to risk any mistakes and give Washington good field position. But whatever it was, it's got to be better than that against Clemson. And I think Sark does give him a good chance to do that. And I don't think the transition will be it'll be pretty seamless. I think for the most part. I mean, I think these guys are pretty comfortable with him, are comfortable enough. It is still it's still a unique situation to be in, no question.
They're able to play the type game from an approach standpoint on offense that they did against Washington this coming Monday night, Nick Saban would be extremely happy, just turn around and hand it off to Bo Scarborough.
Sure.
That's most likely not going to happen. So Jalen Hurts is going to have to shoulder more of the load. It's not necessarily that he played a poor game against Washington. He just didn't have to do much. He only threw it 14 times. So your expectations for Jalen Hurts coming up Monday?
I think he'll get a few more chances to throw the ball downfield a little bit. I don't think he's – I will say, there's been some people on both sides of this. Has he been handcuffed a little bit, Hurts, in terms of, look, we don't need to throw the ball. We don't need to do a whole lot that's too crazy. Make your read. If you don't have it, go ahead and run the ball or or go down. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I think he'll have a few more opportunities, and they're going to have to. They're going to have to give him the ball more. They're going to have to trust him more in this offense at this point. And he's 14. This will be his 15th game into his career, so he's got experience. But you would expect, and I don't think we'll see the same shootout we saw last year. And granted, most of those points came in the second half last year. But I think you're going to need more out of Jalen Hurts for sure, and I expect him to produce that. I mean, look, you can't judge any one team by a game, right? I mean, we tend to overreact on a lot of stuff, whether it be Ohio State, they got blown out by Clemson. Oh, they're not that good of a team, or Clemson's really good because of that semifinal. It's the same way with Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's had a bad game or two, but for the most part of the season, he's been consistent. He's been solid.
Hey, Ben, we get a look at the rushing statistics right there. And just to look at the numbers for the entire season, Damian Harris obviously ran for over 1,000 yards, but this semifinal game was all Bo Scarborough. He looks like Derrick Henry to me, where you look at top-notch running backs across the country, whether it's Mike Weber and Wayne Gallman in the other semifinal game with Ohio State, and Clemson, or Myles Gaskin on the other side of the field with Washington, a very accomplished back. But these last two running backs that have been featured in the Alabama offense, talking Scarborough and Derrick Henry, they just appear to be they're just monsters.
Yeah, and I know we tend to downplay the previous guy and talk about the next big thing. But Bo Scarborough is that next big thing. And, he came from Tuscaloosa, so people in the area are familiar with him and have watched him in high school coming up. He's got a different gear. I mean, Derrick Henry was a great running back. Obviously, he won the Heisman. I think Bo's got maybe a little more explosiveness than he does, but Bo's battled injuries. I mean, that's been a big thing for him, even going back to high school, as he's gotten banged up a little bit, and he's had to battle through that. And Saban's complimented his work ethic. He could have gotten down this year when he was the guy at the beginning of the season that everybody talked about as the Heisman front runner on this Alabama team. Not in the nation, but for this team, and then he didn't come out and play a whole lot. Damian Harris got the start, played really well against USC. Then Joshua Jacobs emerged as a true freshman and carried the ball a good amount in the middle of the season. And now it looks like Bo Scarborough is kind of the hot hand at the moment. So it's not a surprise, but yeah, he's a different animal, Mark. When he gets rolling, he's almost impossible to tackle.
Yeah, last year's championship game obviously became a duel between Deshaun Watson and a number of playmakers on the Alabama side. It was almost a 1-on-5 deal. Kenyon Drake obviously was proved to make the game-changing play in the kick game. But Calvin Ridley's a guy that doesn't have the glossy stats this year because of the quarterback position and because of the dominance of the defense playing those kind of games. But he's a guy that I really want to see step up, and not that it's going to be in his control, but I would love to see the game kind of play into his hands, because he was a guy that really showed us a lot in a number of games last year, made huge catches down the stretch of certain games against the likes of Tennessee and others when they needed a big play. And really, he's kind of been missing in action this year. Again, nothing to do with him, just the offensive approach.
Yeah, and normally 66 receptions at Alabama would land you, in the record books, but not over the past 10 years under Nick Saban. Things have changed quite a bit, but it's been a quiet 66 for him. A lot of those have been quick passes for him and given him opportunity to run the ball, and some of them have been jet sweeps that he's taken. So, maybe he's got more like 45 to 50 true receptions. But yeah, I mean, he's a deep threat. I mean, is Ardarius Stewart's a big play receiver on the outside? But I still think Calvin Ridley is the best receiver on this team, and it seems like he's been open a little bit. He's been missed maybe by Hurts, not seeing him or not having the time to get to him. But if there's going to be a big play down the field, I think Ridley's going to be that guy. O.J. Howard, look, he started to emerge a little bit more against Washington, made some catches, and he loves this big stage. We saw it last year, and I think he can be a threat. But truly, the guy that I think can be the playmaker and help Hurts out the most is Ridley. Whether or not that'll happen next Monday, I don't know. But he's a guy that you got to rely on and give him a chance.
Ben George joining us from Tide at 102.9. Deshaun Watson, of course, gave Bama fits last year. The difference pretty much in the Clemson offense, at least from a skill position standpoint, is that Deshaun's got another year under his belt. He did throw 17 picks, 2 coming against Ohio State, I would say the first one was a bad throw, a bad decision. Guy was covered. The second one was just an amazing play by the safety getting over and catching the ball just barely in bounds. Mike Williams, he's kind of the missing X factor versus what we saw last year because they had tremendous playmakers at wide receiver, but not that guy that could blow the lid off the defense. And Mike Williams is that guy. Your thoughts about Alabama's defense 1 year later and kind of the differences?
Well, it's interesting, Mark. When we talked to some guys last media days in Atlanta, and they left that game against Clemson with the national championship, but a lot of the defenders were upset with the way that they played, or at least with the way that they gave up a chunk of yardage and a lot of points to Clemson. So, even with the championship, they weren't very content with their effort. So, as much as this is a rematch and a revenge opportunity for Clemson, I really think it is for the Alabama defense as well. I think they feel like they have something to prove after what they did out in Glendale last year, which is kind of a scary thought, if you're a Clemson fan. But the other thing that I think that they do really well that will give Deshaun trouble, and you mentioned it, him throwing the ball has been an issue this year with all the interceptions. Alabama can keep a quarterback in the pocket much more than they have in recent years. I mean, even last year, they had trouble keeping Deshaun contained. And I think this year, this defense is different. They can deal with the players they have, and they can deal with 3 and 4 guys. So that could create some problems for Watson if he has to sit back and make those throws against, 6, 7 defenders in the backfield. So we'll see. I mean, I think he's the most talented player that they'll have faced this year. And this is the chance for Alabama's defense to really seal their legacy. I mean, we've talked about it all year. It's been the storyline in Tuscaloosa. Is this the best defense of all time? Some people say yes, some say no. But if they can go out and shut down Clemson, I think you really have an argument.
No, I think the one thing that happens sometimes, Ben, in postseason play, and now it's been magnified by the college football playoff, is that teams, even though they're playing a high level of football, high level of opponent, they see a unit of players or maybe an entire defense or offense that just overwhelms them because they've seen nothing like that. And Clemson's certainly going to see that. I would say Ohio State, maybe Florida State, the best defenses that they saw all year. No question. One of those two defenses was the best defense, and I would say probably Ohio State. But Alabama just playing at another level, so that might be the shock factor for the Clemson offense. For the Alabama defense, though, I'm trying to think, looking at their schedule, maybe Ole Miss when they were hitting on all cylinders, Chad Kelly early in the year before they had all the injuries, and with the playmakers they have on the outside, maybe that was the closest thing that Alabama's seen to this Clemson offense?
Probably. I mean, they probably had the most playmakers at Ole Miss, and it was before that season tanked for them. And Arkansas was pretty effective. But, yeah, outside of that, I mean, this Washington team we thought would pose more of a threat, but Browning went from, one of the top young quarterbacks in football to, will he even get drafted by the NFL with the size and the way he looked in that game? So Alabama's defense does that to you, but this is by far the toughest opponent they'll face offensively, just because of the weapons they have outside, and because Deshaun can make something happen with his feet if something breaks down, if the play breaks down. So, this will be the toughest test, and I can't wait to see it because they have an opportunity, and the defense is good as most of us believe. They could hold Clemson to 15 points or so and come out of that game feeling like this is one of the best we've seen, at least in our lifetime.
So Ben and I get together about once a week to talk some Alabama football. We like to call it Mark Rogers TV Alabama edition. Tonight, Ben, on our flagship show, as we like to say here, Mark Rogers TV's College Football Coast to Coast every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time. So, Ben, I'm not going to hold you to a pick if you haven't made it yet. I know that's going to be released at some time. So if you're not ready for it, where can we find your prediction when it's going to come out?
Yeah, we'll have them up at tide1029.com. We'll probably have those out Friday or Saturday. I'm going to make my way to Tampa in a couple of days, leaving Friday morning. So once I get down there, we'll do Media Day Saturday, and then we'll probably get the predictions down, myself and everybody else at Tide1029. We have about 7-8 guys that will put down predictions. So we'll have those. I don't know if anybody will pick against Alabama. I think it's only happened one time this season, maybe twice in the last 2 or 3 years. So it would be very surprising if somebody actually played Clemson, but who knows? I think crazier things have happened.
Well, it was certainly a great game last year, and Clemson had an opportunity to win. Nick Saban made the call of the game with the onside kick, and Kenyon Drake, of course, with the kick return to turn things around with maybe a 3-point deficit at some point, I think early in the fourth quarter, if I remember correctly. So it was quite a game. I think 45-40 is going to be a little high for this year, as you mentioned, with Alabama's defense and also with the play calling being different with a different quarterback for the Tide. And also, I think people need to remember that it was a two-score game, and that last touchdown was a bit of just a tack on for the point spread observers last season. So not necessarily a classic 45-40 finish. Clemson acquitted itself, but it was in hand with 4 or 5 minutes to play generally.
I'll add this really quickly, Mark, was in terms of Clemson. They should have a lot of confidence coming in this game. I mean, you look at that game, and it was a two-score game late, but Alabama had to execute a perfect onside kick. They had to return a kickoff return. Clemson had a couple of mistakes that they made that, if a couple of bounces, it didn't take a lot, a couple of bounces in that game, and Clemson might have had a two-score lead going in the fourth quarter. So things could have turned out totally differently. They should have a lot of confidence heading in this matchup.
All right, Ben, we always appreciate the time. Ben George from Tide 102.9. And when are you heading out?
Leaving Friday morning, driving down in the Tide 102.9 van. So if you're on the roads and you see me, give me a honk and a wave.
All right, Ben, just watch those parking decks. They can be tricky.
No doubt. It's not easy to drive that thing, Mark.
All right, Ben, appreciate it, man.
All right, take care.
All right, that was Ben George from Tide 102.9, one of our original contributors here at Mark Rogers TV. And Ben, as you can hear, very insightful when it comes to Alabama football. And once we get to the offseason, actually the discussions become even better because we put that historical spin on Alabama's accomplishments. And Ben does an amazing job of providing the insight on the current personnel, but also knowing his Alabama football history like just about no one in existence. We also would like to let you know about a number of sponsorship offers right here at Mark Rogers TV, a number of our sponsorship friends. And the first one would be, of course, GoDaddy. So Mark Rogers TV's College Football Coast to Coast, brought to you by GoDaddy. Grab that catchy domain name that will attract views to your site. Lock it up for big discounted rates by using a number of promo codes. You see one right there. 30% off of new products by using the promo code CJCMR30. We also have a deal where you get 99 cents off by using the promo code CJCMR99, and that's 99 cents off of .com domains. And if that's not good enough for you, we also have $1 per month economy hosting with a free domain by using that promo code CJCMRLW. So catch the post at Mark Rogers TV on Facebook. Also, I will have these promo codes available for you if you're watching the recorded version on YouTube at Mark Rogers TV. So don't go scurrying for your pens and paper right now. If you want to sit and relax and watch and listen to the show here, we will have that information available for you from GoDaddy. Same thing here with FireFan. This is a new app that we're excited about, a new sports app that puts you on the sideline. You call the plays. You make the decisions that matter. I played this for the first time this past NFL Sunday. A number of questions that get thrown your way as the expert prior to your game of choice. It's called FireFan. Download the app, play along with your game of choice, predicting maybe a play that's going to be called. If it's before kickoff, you have a number of decisions about who's going to score when, who's going to compile what statistics. It's a number of things that you can join in and have fun, challenge your friends, your family, strategize with the coaches, win big. Go to FireFan, download the app, and use the promo code you see there. You can play. And again, I will have the link available for you in the description section of the YouTube video and also on Facebook. And actually, I make it so easy for you. When you click on the link, the promo code's already right there. But just in case, promo code you can play, go to FireFan and download the app there. And we still have a number of T-shirts available for college football fans. So yeah, you might want to cross out the Washington T-shirt or the Ohio State T-shirt, or if you still love your team and you're a Huskies or Buckeyes fan, hey, get the T-shirt. It's called Breaking T, and they're novelty T-shirts available for you, the college football fan, and really sports fans in general. But we, of course, focus on college football here at Mark Rogers TV. And you've got Clemson, Washington, Fear the Process, Nick Saban, Alabama, Ohio State, also T-shirt available for you Western Michigan fans who you showed up and played well in the Cotton Bowl. Didn't quite get a win against the Big Ten's Wisconsin Badgers, but good effort by P.J. Fleck and company, Western Michigan. But if you'd like a T-shirt, check them out right there. And again, you can find the link on just about any one of my videos on YouTube at Mark Rogers TV in the description section. All right. We're waiting Mr. Peter Burns, who's joined me many times on Mark Rogers TV with segments talking about the SEC. We also could go to Mr. Ryan Cantor and get the Clemson side. So we've heard from Alabama. And now we'll bring in Ryan Cantor. He's from Shaking the Southland, representing Clemson football, Clemson athletics on SB Nation. Ryan, you with us? Yeah, I got you. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So, Ryan, this is our deal. So everyone, introducing Ryan Cantor here. If you haven't seen him on Shaking the Southland with SB Nation, he's joined me here at Mark Rogers TV, one of our original contributors to Mark Rogers TV. So, Ryan, what do you think? This is our Wednesday night show now. This is our 6th edition, College Football Coast to Coast.
Well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be playing in the biggest game of the year.
So, for Clemson football fans, what do you call yourselves? Clemson Nation? Is that accurate? What's that?
The Clemsonian people.
Clemsonian people. There is no such thing anymore as Clemsoning, of course. Let's get that straight. They've completely annihilated that myth. But for the Clemson football fan, is it the typical mindset of last year, hey, we're happy to be here, we're facing mighty Alabama. Of course, we want to win, but hey, we felt good about playing that great of a football game and playing what's considered close to a classic, versus maybe this year, that second time around, hey, we played with them last year, let's go win the game.
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, last year, we didn't expect to be playing for a national championship. I think a lot of us on the site predicted us to go 10-2. So to go undefeated was unbelievable. And then to have everyone pick Oklahoma to beat us for the most part. And then we really dominated that second half. We were buying plane tickets before the game was over. And then largely outplay Alabama on offense and defense, but get beat so bad on special teams that we couldn't close the deal. That hurt, and it really focused the team on getting back and getting the job done this year. We have a ton of guys departing. So it really feels like this is the year, and it would be a real shame if Alabama, if our time happened to coincide with one of the greatest dynasties of all time and it prevents us from winning a title. That would really be a darn shame.
Hey, Ryan, rarely do these conversations start with special teams, but you mentioned special teams. So I'm a bit fascinated here because that's the way the game changed last year. There were 2 plays. It was the Kenyon Drake kickoff return for the touchdown. And it of course, was the Nick Saban call to execute a perfectly placed onside kick that completely turned the game around and allowed Alabama to win. Your special teams were a concern even going into that game. I know we had the conversations. You had the metrics lined up in regards to the special teams play for Clemson in 2015. This season, based on the metrics I've seen, the special teams rate out much better this year. Although against Ohio State, the kick coverage not the best. Any concerns coming into this game?
I think we've overall seen much better special teams play from a year ago. I had an opportunity to ask Dabo Sweeney a question during his ground proud tour that stopped in Atlanta, and I asked about special teams, and he was a little salty about it. I think he knew how big of a problem it was last year, and took a lot of time and put a lot of effort into fixing it. And in general, the kick return defense has been much improved. Ohio State did have one long return, and Van Smith was the last guy back, barely stopped a kickoff return for touchdown. But for the most part, it hasn't been a huge problem this year. Nowhere near the level it was last year. So that's a big difference. The punting for a lot of the year has been a bigger issue with special teams. And then in the last game, we saw an interesting tweak. Andy Teasdall was punting rugby style, and he did it great. So we'll see if that continues against Alabama.
Deshaun Watson obviously getting the attention as he should. Maybe the best quarterback in college football. Did throw the 17 interceptions. As we talked with Ben, our last guest, based on my viewpoint, I would say the first one was a questionable decision, a really good play by the DB. The second one, he was just throwing it to the corner of the end zone, and the safety made an incredible play, Malik Hooker getting to the sideline. So not horrible decision-making from Deshaun Watson. He did throw the 17 picks this year, but I'm going to leave it wide open for you, Ryan, in regards to your thoughts about the offense, and we're going to continue the theme in making the comparison last year to this year. Obviously, Mike Williams in play this year, and that changes the dynamic of the threat downfield.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Ohio State has probably the best secondary we faced, and I haven't finished all my analysis, but I would imagine that Alabama is probably better than Ohio State everywhere but the secondary. So in that game against Ohio State, you saw Watson and Mike Williams challenge the secondary, and Ohio State made some great plays. They're a great team with the secondary being the strength, but Clemson won a lot of one-on-one matchups against one of the best secondaries in the country. There's a few plays in particular where Mike Williams was just one-on-one and just beat an elite NFL level. So I think that is a huge difference from a year ago. You have Mike Williams, a top 2, top 3 wide receiver, maybe the best wide receiver in the country now available. And you have Deion Kane, who was Clemson's only other real deep threat last year, and he was suspended. So I think Clemson will have a much better opportunity to stretch the defense than they did a year ago, and that'll be a real key.
All right, let's talk some defense. The Alabama offensive line, stellar as usual. Ohio State came into the game, and now we know how rough of a spot Ohio State had along the offensive front, but there was even concern going into the Fiesta Bowl, and then it was completely exposed by the likes of Christian Wilkins. Clelin Ferrell had an amazing game up front, but the lateral speed of this defensive front and then the ability to also anchor it down in the middle is pretty amazing, and it's just this we talked about it recently, Ryan. It's recruiting combined with development of players.
Yeah, Clemson's recruiting on the defensive line is comparable to Alabama, and that's where their defense is so incredibly talented. They average 4.25 stars on the defensive line in the 2 deep. That's a 4-3 scheme, so that's 8 different guys. You have Christian Wilkins, who's one of the best sophomore D linemen in the country. He's moved to defensive end now because we had some injuries, and it just puts the best 4 guys on the line on the field. And I think that's going to be an area where Clemson has to win the battle. If they're going to be this ridiculously talented Alabama team. Jalen Hurts has not been excellent when under pressure, and his stats against the elite defenses, and he's played quite a few elite defenses to his credit, are notably different than when he plays mediocre defenses, and he can turn them up. They've really relied on a ground and pound attack against elite defenses like LSU. And so if Clemson's D-line could stop up the run, I don't know that they could rely on Jalen Hurts' arm to win games. They haven't had to do it all year, and I would be surprised if they have to do it now for the first time against one of the best defenses they've played and they come through.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how much Clemson does sell out against the run, because Bo Scarborough, we talked about it with Ben previously, he's in that Derrick Henry mold. In addition to having probably much better speed than Derrick Henry, is just a battering ram that defenses have to gang tackle to have any chance, because he is just a monster. And Alabama, with a freshman quarterback and Jalen Hurts, who's not accustomed to shouldering the load, we'll see how much Clemson really loads the box and makes it obvious that, hey, we are daring you to throw, because while you do that against teams that are limited at the receiver position, that's not the case with Alabama. They just have the quarterback that's less proven than most teams playing in a championship game, but Alabama very equipped at wide receiver to make big plays if given the chance. So that's going to be obviously a Brent Venables decision to make, how much we truly load up the box and dare them to throw it downfield.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State is definitely a run-first team, and you saw Clemson really jam up that run game. They almost didn't bother handing the ball up to Mike Weber, which is usually a huge component of their offense. Clemson has a great D-line, and they've always been, I shouldn't say always, but in recent years have been very good at stopping the run. As Clemson pulled away from Ohio State, you saw them finally try to take a few deep shots, and 2 plays in a row, Ohio State got pass interference calls. I think you have to be able to take a couple shots. Clemson's secondary is probably the least talented group of their defense, maybe of the whole roster. That's not to say they're not talented and they're not good. Cordrea Tankersley's an NFL cornerback. But I think you've got to take some shots against Clemson's defense, especially if you want to loosen it up and make some run plays.
All right, Ryan, before we let you go, this has to be exciting. So you've been a Clemson fan for a long, long time, and obviously attended school there. You write for Shaking the Southland, so you live this, you work this almost on a daily basis, do some great work for them. But Clemson for a long, long time was a very solid football program, a lot of talent, but winning 7, 8, 9 football games a year, and now you're in the nation's elite. You've reached that blue blood status currently, and there's an expectation that you're going to play that well. That's got to be exciting. And also, I'm just interested, what does game night look for you like coming up on Monday night in regards to trying to relish the moment and really focus on football?
Yeah, I recently wrote an article about how Clemson really was not that great for so long. I remember when I was an incoming freshman and my RA told me, Clemson's great. You're going to have a great experience. Just don't get too excited about the football team. And it was true. It would always rip your heart out. I don't remember the exact different collapses, but in 2000, they lost 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 to close the season. In 2006, they lost something similar to close the season, lost their bowl game. 2007, they got their heart ripped out by Matt Ryan. They never came through. They never didn't feel worth it, but you were always there. You were always all in because it was a community, and you could either console your best friends over the loss, and then you could look forward to players who surely wouldn't live up to the hype. And now those guys are living up to the hype, and they're coming through. And it's just really cool to come together as a community of folks and celebrate together. And hopefully we can do it one more time in the biggest way we've done it in our lifetimes.
Okay, Ryan, I promise one more question. I'm going to throw one more at you because Dabo Swinney, his approach to college football and coaching at this day and age, unique. Pete Carroll, to a certain extent, there's an element of what we saw Pete Carroll accomplish there at USC in regards to his approach and really having fun with the players, not minding to laugh on the sideline and being close to the players. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, more of the old school approach. Jim Harbaugh, an old school approach with an kind of oddball characteristic to it. But Dabo Swinney's approach, you wouldn't think would work in big-time college football, but he has created a family atmosphere there at Clemson, despite it being big business, and it's working.
Yeah, and the term Clemson family was around before Dabo Swinney was a head coach, and that's something that Clemson's talked about for years. I went to University of Georgia for grad school and loved it, and it's a great school. And people ask me which I like more, and I tell them Georgia's an incredibly fun place. Nowhere as fun as Athens, but Clemson's a way more special community, and that's the difference. And that's what Dabo is able to highlight in his recruiting. And players go, when they take a visit, they see it, and it's obvious, and it's special. And I think just the way Clemson is, Dabo is the ultimate fit for Clemson. No one could be as good a fit. No one could be as good a coach for Clemson as Dabo. Dabo can't be as good of a coach for anyone as he can be for Clemson. It's the ultimate fit. we're very, very fortunate that Terry Don Phillips made a seemingly ridiculous hire and hired a wide receivers coach with no experience, and it worked out.
Yes, it certainly has worked out in spades, and who knows what the future holds for a program that has reached the heights of college football now 2 consecutive years. Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland helping us break down the national championship game. Ryan, we always appreciate the time, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right, and this is College Football Coast to Coast. We come your way every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time and break it down like none other. As you can see here with Ben George from Tide 102.9 on the Alabama side, and we bring in Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland. And now, without further ado, Peter Burns is on the line. Don't have Peter Burns. Unfortunately, we don't have Peter, and I don't think we're going to get him. I would have heard from Peter, I believe, on my cell phone, and I don't see any text coming in. We had Peter lined up for last week's show, and he let me know he got tied up with that ESPN business, so whatever they do over there in regards to his obligations there on set. So you can certainly search Peter Burns videos on my YouTube channel. We've had a number of great discussions concerning SEC football, and we will land him on this show come hell or high water here at some point. But this has been our College Football Coast to Coast show. Even though we've wrapped up a couple interesting segments here with Ben and Ryan, we will be joined by a number of contributors here in the next few days on Mark Rogers TV to further set you up for what looks to be a great national championship game, Clemson and Alabama. Join me on Facebook, join me on Twitter at Mark Rogers TV, and also, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mark Rogers TV, and also Mark Rogers TV SEC, Pac-12, and ACC for your football needs. For Marty McPadden, I'm Mark Rogers. We will see you next week on College Football Coast to Coast.